Hello, everybody, and welcome to Mystical Awakenings with Deb and Arjay right here on KGRA. We are excited to introduce our guest tonight. He's pretty amazing, so I'm going to let Arjay do that.
Hi, everybody. So tonight we have Bill Konkolesky. He has been the state director of the Michigan chapter of the Mutual UFO Network since 2004. A lifetime of his own UFO and abduction encounters, he spent the last 3 decades actively investigating these otherworldly phenomena. What he's discovered, confronting these cosmic mysteries, is that reality is far stranger than he could have ever imagined. Bill is the author of The Experiencer Raised in Two Worlds, as well as the sequel Experiencer Two Worlds Collide, and his personal abduction experiences have been chronicled in the ABC News special UFOs Seen is Believing, the SyFy documentary Abduction Diaries, as well as streaming documentaries Abducted by Aliens, Alien Contact, and America Alien Invasion. He's also appeared on Unsolved Mysteries, speaking on Michigan UFO history, and served as a consultant to the History Channel's Hangar One and UFO Hunters, National Geographic Channel's The Truth Behind, as well as the Science Channel's Uncovering Aliens and Close Encounters. He's also just done a show on Unsolved Mysteries. And I have that written down somewhere. I'm sorry. Oh, gosh.
Something in the Sky?
Something in the Sky, correct. And he's also a regular guest at our Michigan UFO Contact Convention here in Holt Lake, Michigan. But more importantly, is a good friend of ours. Welcome, Bill Konkolesky.
Yay.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on.
Well, it's
Welcome, and thank you for being here, Bill. Now, I just want to add to that you are a humongous part of the Michigan UFO Contact. Humongous. I feel bad some years, well, all years, because, I really put you to work.
Oh, yeah.
You do a lot.
Well, I got to lay down through some of it last time.
That's true. That's true. You had a regression by Mary Bassett that was
live in front of the audience.
Yeah, it was mind-blowing. People loved it. And kudos to you for being brave enough to do that.
Yeah, I agreed. I agreed before I thought about what I did. And so I'm like, oh, well, better go through with
it. And you did. And you did a fantastic job at it. It was remarkable. So there's been a lot going on with you. This new show on Netflix. Now I tuned into that. I didn't even know that was coming. That was pretty phenomenal. And is that something that you've been involved with since the beginning of it?
You mean that particular episode, Something in the Sky?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. I remember it was November 11th, 2020. I remember because it was the day I released my second book, and I wanted to have it out on 11/11 being my, my number. And and it was right after I submitted it for publication. Within 10 minutes, I got a phone call from the studio that puts on Unsolved Mysteries for Netflix. And they said, hey, do you have any ideas for shows? And so we're going back and forth. And I said, just 2 months ago, the radar operator of the big March 8th, 1994 UFO event here, he did a television interview for Channel 3 in the Kalamazoo area. I don't remember the call letters. And I said, he's retired now, and he's willing to talk about his sighting. I said, this is a new thing. He hasn't been wanting to talk about this for several years. And she's like, the woman I was talking to, she's like, oh, yeah, that is kind of a big deal, isn't it? And I gave her a list of names of people that should be on it. Officer Jeff Feldhaus, and they got all of them on the show. And I was so excited when I was just like, hey, here's an idea. And they actually went with it. So when I was, I was interviewed for it as well. But really, for me, I joined MUFON in 1993, a few months before this event happened. I hadn't even passed my field investigator exam. And yet this huge UFO event was happening on the west side of the state. Over 300 witnesses, so many calls into 911. They got it on radar through the National Weather Service. And some of these witnesses, like this family of 4, parents and the 2 kids, the Graves family, see this giant UFO across the street. And then they're joined by a police officer with them that sees it. And then the radar is actually watching it as well. I'm like, that's absolutely phenomenal. And when it's one of the things I think that really got me involved with MUFON was coming in at such an exciting moment. And I'd always wanted to do that show justice with on television. I worked with UFO Hunters, I think it was 2008, something like that, to get some version of it out there. And that was okay. But now was really the moment where everything came together, and I'm super proud of it. I'm on camera a couple times, like once in the middle for like a minute or two, and at the end for a minute or two. And a bunch of friends were saying to me, like, "Oh my gosh, you must have been so bummed you were only on it for a couple minutes." I'm like, "No, this is my baby." I pitched the show to them,
Right?
I told them who should be on it, and really, it is. They are the witnesses. These people that got the camera time, they are the people that deserve that. And
Right.
I'm just so proud to have it come out.
Right. Well, good for you for doing that, because, through the whole thing, I kept thinking, this is perfect. And it's coming out at the perfect time when, the government's, of course, not being able to deny anything. NASA is bringing in 16 scientists to study UFOs. I mean, this is huge. And a show like this, Bill, there's no denying that there was something there. A lot of somethings. That was pretty incredible. So I really, I push everybody to go to Netflix. If you don't have a Netflix account, get one or borrow one from somebody. It's well worth putting some time into that.
No, Bill, you mentioned that was one of the main reasons you got into it, but you were experiencer ever since you were a wee lad, right?
2.
So
yeah,
yeah,
2 years old.
Yeah. Now, when you were young, did you remember that stuff? I mean, did you talk about it? And were you able to talk about it with people? So, it was that, and also was that a reason why that you ended up doing what you're doing?
Yeah, I often say UFOs took an interest in me before I took an interest in them.
Right.
My very first memory, age 2, I was in my crib late at night, and a little gray guy came in to the foot of my crib, looked down over me with these big liquidy black eyes, and burned in my memory from that very moment that it occurred. This wasn't something that years later I'm like, something might have happened to me when I was young or anything like that. No, I remembered it right as it happened and never went away. And I'm in there in the crib screaming for my parents. And my mother just keeps saying, go to sleep, and never came in the room. And the little gray guy walked out, and don't know where it went. At age 4, during the daytime, 3 little guys came into my room in the afternoon. And then I had an encounter at age 7 where they took me on board. I got a scar on my arm. And the next day they came to check on me, and this mist that rolled into the backyard. And the boy I was playing with from across the street, he saw the mist. He didn't see the little aliens. And encounters at 9, 10, many into my teens and early 20s, particularly. Before it started to taper off, they never really have stopped, but those were the big years. And to address what you were asking was, did I have anybody to talk to? Yeah, I have 4 older brothers. Well, one has recently passed, so 3 older brothers. But growing up, among my 4 older brothers, no sisters, this is just the 5 boys. The 2 oldest brothers I have, we could go toe to toe on a strange experience contest.
Right.
It's just crazy the stuff that's happened between us. And then the next 2 brothers, between them, 0, not a single event at all, nothing. So the 2 oldest brothers, all sorts of stuff. The next 2 brothers, nothing. And then with me, it picks up back again, just like, at the level that my oldest brothers were experiencing stuff. Now, it runs on my mom's side of the family, strange phenomena and UFO abduction stuff too.
Mhm.
But when I was young, my parents didn't want my older brothers to talk about it around me. They didn't want
Right.
to put ideas in my head. They didn't want to scare me. And, soon I'm talking about my own stuff. And so my parents told my older brothers, quite, I think, as a sign of good parenting, listen, that they could listen and show some compassion, which they did, but not share their own stuff. Like, oh, that's very interesting. Not, oh, you're crazy, and then like punch me or something. I don't know. Older brothers, but so um, yeah, I had a support system all through this, and then when I got into like middle school, junior high age, whatever, I started to hear about some of the things that had happened to them, and then I realized, wow, that sort of double-edged sword, because on one side, when you hear somebody else telling their own events, you're like, oh my gosh, I thought I was crazy, but now somebody else has had the same things or similar things happen to them. But then that means like, well, I can't just write that off as being crazy anymore. It must have really happened.
Right. Right. I had a similar experience. I had two older brothers that I was able to talk to, and my mother also. So I had no sisters. But yeah, that's sounds very familiar. Now, do you think, and I'm sure you've thought about this, that they've maybe guided you to where your endeavor is led and what you're doing?
Yeah, these experiences, if this answers your question, left me yearning to have somebody to speak to about what's happened to me, outside of my immediate comfort zone of family and some friends. And when I discovered MUFON in '93, I actually did it circuitously by finding out first about the Center for UFO Studies, and then they said I should contact Michigan MUFON, and I did. I was just absolutely blessed that Shirley Coyne was the state director at the time, an experiencer herself all her life, very compassionate, understanding. I got a series of free regression sessions from her, and then I felt like I was indoctrinated into sort of a family. MUFON in general investigates flying saucer activity, lights, things in the sky, and does have its own sort of abduction experiencer investigative group that is widely autonomous. But there was what I found is that there's no better place to find other experiencers than actually within MUFON.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And somebody had asked about, if anybody else in your family had experiences as well. Do you think that's pretty common that families are experiencers?
Yeah. I would say it's kind of like a disease almost, the experiencer phenomena. I mean, some people have negative, some people have positive experiences, but so those are disease analogy. You just got to stick with me when I explain what I mean. So I think there are three ways to become an experiencer yourself. An experiencer meaning someone who has contact experiences with unknown entities. One is it runs in the family. Like I said, it runs in my mom's side of the family.
Mhm.
And so therefore that's how I caught it, especially at a young age. And then you could also catch it if you are close to somebody who's an experiencer. Like if you marry an experiencer, odds are at some point, something's going to happen because you're that close together, or close friends, or anything like that. And then the third way is that sometimes if you move into a location, or you're in a location that has a high degree of activity based upon somebody else being the experiencer, you can catch it that way. So you move into a house that an experiencer has sold to you, that experiencer has had experiences in that home for several years to decades. And
Right.
there could be that residual chance that something could happen. And then once you have that first experience, it doesn't really seem to let up. You become part of the club.
Yeah.
You become a frequent flyer like the rest of the folks that have had this all
Right.
their lives.
Right. And somebody had asked if you feel that it's linked with paranormal activity.
Boy, the conversation on UFOs, it really depends on how comfortable you are, how far you can actually go down the rabbit hole. Um, from uh, from how to start a conversation like this is often challenging
Right.
because from an outside perspective, we'll just start from the outside. People that watch the TV shows maybe, or just sort of vaguely hear about the different phenomena, say, oh, there's those UFO people, and there's those Bigfoot people, and then there's those ghost people. And a lot of times these phenomena will overlap, where you'll have witnesses that experience multiple of these types of encounters. They'll see a Bigfoot and they'll have some UFO encounter. They'll have ghost activity, poltergeist, and see either a ghost or a UFO. And it all sort of comes together in the respect that it's all happening to the same witness, sometimes in ways that seem interrelated. And when I talk about the rabbit hole, it really sometimes, like, for example, in the UFO community, we'll banter about alien. Oh, and then the alien came down, and then the alien did this. But, we don't know if the alien is some being from another planet, some interdimensional being, some
Right.
spiritual being, some
Yep.
sort of time travel version of us.
Yep.
But you need some kind of language to hold onto to even begin a discussion. And sometimes people, so you see this weird, like a shadow person. There we go. That's a great example. In the UFO phenomena, like a shadow person seems to be in the UFO lane, but to a ghost hunter, that's a spirit, right? And all is that it's an entity. So if you swap out alien or ghost and replace it with entity,
Mhm.
then the aperture widens a little bit. And then when you start bringing in all the things that had happened to me, besides seeing UFOs, besides having contact experience, I've experienced poltergeist activity. I've had premonitions of things that have come true. I've seen a ghost of somebody I knew, and it just, and the synchronicities that start to ramp up when you really connect with the phenomena, any of these phenomena, starts to tick up. And I can't just say I'm going to take this part of my life and put it in this box, take this part of my life and put it in that box. It all blends together so well and in some really bizarre, creative ways. And sometimes when I look at where I am in my life now, I look back at the series of really unlikely things that have had to happen to put me where I am now. And I just think, wow, has my whole life been a series of events that have been laid out for me in some form of fate, or what's going on? And then so you just add that sort of other aspect to it. And
Right.
yeah, so I do really personally think it's all blended together. I represent an organization that tends to focus on the flying saucer phenomena.
Yeah.
And so when I talk about this other stuff that happens to me, that's not necessarily MUFON stuff. That's my own stuff. But
Right.
yeah,
Right.
I don't know.
Okay, there's another one, Debbie Emerson. Do you think you are randomly chosen to have these experiences, or is it a level of being open?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, great question. I'll go back to saying that I think that I have these type of things happen because it runs in my family. But I will say, when it comes to the random thing, I'll interpret. I'll go on and look at it this way. Some people say, "Why do you think that this happened to you?" And the longer that I've been in this field of the being in the UFO community, looking into the UFO phenomena, the number of people out there that claim contact is just staggering. It's just really an incredibly large population of
Yeah.
people, you know,
Yeah.
and you know, I know hundreds of people that most of whom I can count as friends who've had this type of phenomena. And these are just the people I know in my little corner of the community in the grand scheme of the world population of a small percentage who is comfortable to talk about it. Right. So there is a very large number of people that this is happening to. And so, you know, in the, you know, the question of, does it make me feel special? I'm like, no, I'm just part of this community of a large number of people that this happens to. What is my part in this community? I'm able to talk about it. So I do. Many
Right.
people
Exactly.
aren't able to talk about it.
Mhm.
And so I feel an obligation to do so. And it is a very cathartic thing to be able to just open your mouth and talk about these experiences that are every bit a part of your life as you know, just going to the grocery store. And this is
Right.
all part of my life. I remember a friend of mine, experiencer Sandy Nichols, asked me several years ago, do I ever wish that none of this had ever happened to me? And I replied quite rightfully, I'm like, I wouldn't recognize myself. You know, because this has been at my core. My very earliest memory is of a UFO related a contact experience. And so I wouldn't know myself if it wasn't for this phenomenon. I have no idea what I'd be doing with my life.
Right.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't know you. So, you know, I
Yeah.
don't wish that you hadn't had these experiences.
But
Because I feel very blessed.
yeah. But getting back to that original question, I like you said, I think it's all related.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what is paranormal? It's everything but the normal, right? And a lot of it is interdimensional. And, you know, as ghost hunters, we've done investigations where things came through the EVP as EVPs, and we knew it wasn't a human spirit. Okay. Talking about things like ships and different planets. So, you know, I think that it's different, but it's the same. But that's my opinion.
Yeah.
So
As you open yourself up, you open yourself up to everything, and anything could happen. So
right. So experiencers, Bill. Some people have full memory. Some people have pieces of memory, and some people don't remember anything. Do you know why this happens?
Boy, that's a very broad topic.
Yeah.
It is.
And a lot depends on the type of memories that come up. There are people I know that don't want to remember anything, and they sort of give an intent to the beings, like, whatever you do, I don't want to remember it. I don't want to know. And sometimes people, when they remember things, it's kind of scary. And I think these events are so dramatic that they break through the sort of post-hypnotic suggestion that they get to not remember. And sometimes people have positive memories, and in part that could be because these people know that they're experiencers. And you know, if I'm an experiencer and I'm having trouble with these type of experiences, but hey, that one memory I have that sticks with me wasn't so bad. So, you know, maybe this isn't a worst case scenario. I think people in general, some people, you know, you always have that friend like, oh my gosh, that's that friend of mine who remembers everything. You know, they never forget anything. And everybody knows one of those people, at least one, that it has just amazing memory. And so, you know, that's just part of it too, is people's natural ability to remember or not remember.
Okay. Interesting. Very interesting. And I know that when I had an experience and I said to you, if I were abducted, I would know it, right? And you said, no. they're experts at erasing memory. But I, since then I've wondered many times, or I really feel, I think I say it often, that they do that to protect us.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that way too?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll put this in here because I think it sort of relates to the part of the topic that we're discussing. I think that, and what I found over years of looking into what's happened to me, hearing what's happened to other people, I think for the most part, at least some of the beings that are coming to us, the ones that are coming to me specifically, I don't think their natural form is a physical form. I think they're a form of consciousness that is able to manifest in the physical form when they need to be put into a physical form. I've seen little gray guys about 3 feet tall that feel very drone-like. They almost seem like just automatons. Slightly taller, 5 foot tall gray people, gray individuals, entities, whatever, and they seem to have seem to be more with it. And then I've seen mantis being 7 feet tall as well, and those are kind of scary. But when they contact us in the physical form, what they look at as the physical is a vehicle. Their consciousness coming into a body that they drive around in the physical universe.
Mm-hmm.
And then so they don't think too much of their physical form. It's just a car they drive around. And when they come to us and we're all in a panic tizzy to see them and feeling threatened at our core, they're like, we just want to commune with your consciousness, but you are so based in your ego body that you can't see past the fact that you are a spiritual being. You think that you're a physical being and that we portray a threat to you. But we're consciousness, your consciousness. Namaste, can't we just have this conversation? But they always do come seemingly at the worst time. Out on the road in the middle of nowhere, come to your bed in the middle of the night, and of course our bodies are going to freak out. And of course that ego part of us is going to clutch to life and say, oh my gosh, what's happening? This is terrible. I've had a number of experiences that are non-physical with them. They can pluck people out of body. It's happened to me. And, they also show up at these startling times. And they also then don't have as much respect for our bodies because, hey, that's just the thing we drive around in. Don't mind us. Well, we just put a little dent in your arm. It's just your vehicle. You're not going to have it around, much longer. And so I think on that level, there's this sort of disconnect in communication. When we and the beings are in a spiritual consciousness form, that's fine. But when they have to deal with us in our physical form, so many people, they don't know beyond their body, and so
Right.
Of course it feels a huge threatening thing when something that shouldn't even exist shows up and takes their body someplace. What greater fear could there be than that if somebody just clings to their body as their who they are?
Right,
Mhm.
right.
Yeah. So do you feel that they take your consciousness more often because it's easier? I mean, I would think that it's easier on both parts.
Yeah.
Both
So,
sides.
yeah, it is true that there is a physical aspect to the broader phenomena where they're interested in what happens to our physical forms over the course of several generations. And, there is some sort of broader project that involves things physically, but, that's just one aspect of it. The other aspect, the consciousness, the psychic aspect of it, is also ongoing. And, it's just, I think, tends to be the same people that have these consciousness experiences are also the people that have the physical experiences. It's the same group of people, the same population. They want to connect with us, teach us things, have us be part of the, universal community, however that ultimately looks. But they also have that side project where they mess with our bodies.
Yeah, I was listening to somebody the other night about, they're so far advanced that they know how to download consciousness and soul energy into synthetic bodies, so they avoid death. And that's why, like you say, those 3-foot grays, they all look the same and might look robotic, but they still have a live soul consciousness within them. But and they look sexless, because they don't have to. They just make synthetic bodies and get into them. I mean, I don't know if that's one concept of it, that's why they look the way they do. But yeah, if you're able to download your consciousness into a different body, and I'm not really talking about cloning, I'm talking about downloading your soul energy and your consciousness into a synthetic body that they already have, and just continue that way. They don't have to go through the trauma of life, so they don't forget who they are, what they are, the trauma of being born and dying. So I don't know how you feel about that, but it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
He's like, I don't know how I feel about this either.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, it's just.
Oh, I'm taking your point. I have nothing to
Yeah.
add because I think that you put it eloquently, not because I'm just
Okay.
like,
Yeah.
Right. Well, Candace had a question. There it is.
Mm-hmm.
Can they impose a memory? If you remember being on a ship and see a dog, later you remember that it's not a dog at all. Have you heard of this?
Oh yeah, I've even experienced it. Once, and I'm trying to think of how I want to edit this, but I can just simply say straight out that once they told me that somebody that I saw was a hybrid, part them, part us, and only to turn out that was in fact a screen memory, which is a term where they try to fool you. And in fact, it was another person. It was not a hybrid. And that's a long story for a totally different time.
Right.
But Mike Cleland, who had appeared at the Michigan UFO Contact Conference last year, he told a story right at the conference about this woman who was walking out in the woods and saw just a gray alien just standing there, on the road, and she's like, "What the heck?" And then all of a sudden, the being, she could hear it saying over and over again, "Owl, owl, owl, owl," and then she said it looked like an owl. And then she said it looked like just this giant owl standing there along the side of the road. So yeah, I think that they're masters at being able to fool us and seeing things in a way that they want us to when they need it to. Yeah.
So shape shifting is easy for them. Okay. Is it possible for your family bloodlines are a part of an agenda for sort of a hybridization
program? Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't. There are people that have accounts of seeing small children that they're certain are their own children.
Yep.
But on board a craft, and they're not all completely human. I have no such experience with that sort of children meeting anything that they consider to be they tell me that are my offspring or feel like my offspring. Though I certainly know several credible people that have that kind of experience. Deb White Cobble, her experience is very focused on the experiences she had with the hybrid program, and but yeah, for myself, I don't know that what they've done so much to have me produce like little bills out in space or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, I think anything's possible. The more I learn, I really don't know a lot, and they know a lot more than we do. So I know you had some other questions.
Well, I didn't really want to change the subject, but I think I will a little bit here. I wanted to talk a little bit about disclosure. I like talking about this. in your opinion, everybody says the government knows and it's not telling us. The government's not telling us. But do you feel that it's really them that is telling our governments, we'll let you know when we can have a full-blown disclosure, or how it's going to happen slowly?
Okay, and usually I have a sort of a different response that sort of follows why I think the government is going slowly on this. But I'll take this invitation to talk about one possibility of them influencing things. And just in case everybody doesn't know, the next UAP report is going to come out on Halloween. The next, so the next official report that the government military is going to have, the Department of Defense is going to put out a UAP report on Halloween Day. We'll see
Nice.
what happens with that. Prepare to be underwhelmed, I suppose, but you never know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that, okay, and this is me going out a little bit on a limb, but if I can't do it at a place like this, where can I? I think for the most part, most of the civilizations flying out there in the universe are moral, ethical at a level that we are not, and they are concerned about letting us loose in the galaxy.
I agree.
And I mean, you've heard versions of that many times, but
Mhm.
I just really think what a mess we would create if we couldn't clean up our own house first
Right.
before going out there. I think that we're being monitored, and if things get too crazy, they'll step in and do something, whether it be on behalf of the planet itself as a living organism, big biosphere,
Right.
or on behalf of the people specifically that live there, or some version of both. Yeah, I don't think that the beings want to be, I don't think they want that sort of parlay right now. I don't think they view us as equals until we can get over this sickness of aggression and just be able to get along a lot better. And
I agree.
I know that can sound preachy, but I would argue, don't look at that as preachy. Look at that as practical.
Right.
You wouldn't, a house cat is nice, but you're not going to bring a tiger into your house, right?
Right.
So it's a very practical thing. You don't let the
Mhm.
dangerous animal out of its cage. And we're that dangerous animal right now. And
Mhm.
right, you think, we're in a better, a more enlightened place, but really, we're on the verge of World War III, aren't we? I mean, this
Yeah.
escalation going on in Eastern Europe, who knows where that's going to go next? So senseless, so awful, so stupid, and that's people. When these beings look down at the planet, and they read their daily news, like it's about war, it's about political unrest in this country, in this other country, and it's just a mess. I'll get off my soapbox.
No, I agree with you on a
I
lot of
agree
points
too.
there. If they have a big hand in this place, like a lot of people say, then hopefully they're not going to let that happen, or we're not going to make that happen. So
Right. And Terry was asking something. Can you put that? There we go. Besides RH factor, does there seem to be other criteria that these families they follow have?
Another thing is blue eyes. I will say two things about RH factor and blue eyes. Blue eyes, I have bluish eyes, right? And my parents, both my mom and my dad, have brown eyes, and yet 4 out of 5 of their kids have blue eyes. So that's kind of an odd thing there, and seems to go along with the phenomena. Though it's not to say that I don't know many experiencers who have brown eyes. That's, to me, I don't know. And then about the Rh negative blood that they say is a thing amongst experiencers, my blood type is A positive. So,
Right.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, you could possibly look at the data of people that will confirm biological aspects of themselves and say the majority are this or the majority are that, but I don't think you'll find any absolutes about the
Right.
the population of experiencers. At best you could come up and say, the odds of this should be 50-50, and yet it's like 65-35, and that's an interesting data point. But what does that mean if 2/3 of the experiencers have blue eyes? Yeah, I don't know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's so hard to say. And I think that we're at a time that we don't have enough experiencers talking yet. I
Hmm.
think we're coming into the time,
Hmm.
people are becoming more open, and that's why a lot of us do what we do, is to help people open up and talk about it. But I don't think there's enough data yet. I really don't.
Hmm. Yeah, there used to be, I mean, back in the sort of the golden era of the abduction phenomena, if you will, starting with like the late 70s when the Travis Walton story came out and Betty and Barney Hill's story, although it happened in the 60s, got great publicity in the mid
Mhm.
70s from that movie that came out with James Earl Jones. And then the 80s and the 90s with Bud Hopkins and Whitley Strieber and John Mack, et cetera, et cetera. And there was a lot of really good material coming out in terms of books on the whole contact phenomena experiencers. And a lot of people were very open with their stories. They were coming out, they were sharing, they were telling a lot, and all of a sudden, phoom, it all seemed to go away. And now there isn't any sort of central repository or spokesperson of the experiencer phenomena that is able to really be out there. Like, like when Strieber was really focused on the experiencer stuff, and he still obviously talks about it.
Right.
But, back in the day, he was, very much out there for the rights of experiencers. As Mack and Hopkins, very vocal, David Jacobs, I could go on, obviously, but there were spokespeople that were very front and center that managed to catch a spotlight. And I think we live in this sort of paradox of a situation now. I really think probably more people are talking about their experiences than ever. But
Right.
the internet is so wide and and unfathomably large that little pockets of experiencers are having their conversations, sharing their stories here and there, but not necessarily through the megaphone that we got in the 80s and 90s with these big characters coming out and talking about the phenomena and everyone paying attention. I think the internet has made it difficult for people to break out and be a spokesperson in this particular area. A lot of people are just as talented as the people in the 80s and 90s talking about this phenomena,
Hmm.
putting out materials, things like that. It's just that I think it's harder to catch the attention right now of people. You do have every once in a while in the UFO field itself uh, a breakout celebrity like a Lou Elizondo or a
Hmm.
Tom DeLonge, somebody that gets their 15 minutes. And when you look at it, the amount of content they have behind their character doesn't seem very deep. And God bless them. I'm not. This isn't a criticism. It's just they have their part to say. They say it, and then there's really nothing more to be said from them, and then the next pop-up UFO celebrity happens. But yeah, I don't know. It's an odd thing, and part of me wonders, does that mean that the phenomena is more acceptable now, and therefore it's not as exciting to have a spokesperson about it because the topic has been around so long and people can share their stories in many cases without too much headwinds. I don't
Mhm.
know.
It's amazing, when they come out and say that the government has admitted that some of these things are not from here. Nobody blinked an eye. Nobody
Mhm.
blinks an eye. They just, oh yeah. So is that because we're more aware, or people are just not not there yet, but I think it's both actually. But
Oh yeah, and I think another couple elements, to ingredients to throw in here. One is people are conditioned to be more accepting now
mhm.
of different lifestyles, different cultures. You know, it's no longer cool to tell the jokes that your parents told, obviously,
Right.
you know, for starters. And, you know, people are more compassionate. And if somebody has a unique take on life, you know, the general message is out there, be kind, right? So that's part of it. And I think another part of it is um, people just can't be bothered with other people.
Yes.
I think I think people are social hermits. They
Yeah.
they exist around other people, but they just really don't care about what's going on with a lot of other people. And
Mhm.
oh, you know, you say you alien thing, whatever, cool, man, you do you. You know,
Right.
so I think it's a part of an active compassion for other lifestyles, other, you know, things that happen in people's lives, as well as people just sort of checking out on a social
Mhm.
level. I really think that social media has just really pulled people in so many different directions, and um, you know, it's brought people together and pulled people apart. And
Right.
you know, when you know, you just think about culture in general right now, like when you think about the last couple decades of the 20th century, these big like music artists, you know, if you like go on to YouTube and say like music, the top hits of 1983 or something, you're like, wow, that was a great song. Wow, that was a great song. Wow, I remember that band. Wow, I remember. But like since the 21st century started, it's like there really aren't any musical celebrities. And
Right.
what about fashion trends? You know, you look at the, you know, you could see somebody dressed, oh, 70s, 80s, 90s, you know, whatever. The last, you know, what were you going to have somebody in yoga pants or something now? Is that the, yeah, I just think that the social cohesion isn't quite there when in
Mhm.
defense of my argument of can't even be bothered. People will dress any way they want, um, you know, stream any TV show that nobody else has ever watched. Just yeah, it's a strange way of the level of content out there right now makes it really difficult for people to come together, I think. And
That
and
makes a lot of sense.
and that's way off the UFO topic in some sense, but I think it makes the people that are in the UFO community a lot less bothered by other people that in previous decades might have had an issue with the topic, and
Mhm.
that they're just like, okay, there's somebody else doing their own thing. Why not?
Right.
Right. Right. Yeah, I totally get that. You know, one thing we get a lot though is people that say, "Oh, I don't believe in any of that stuff," but you know that one time,
Yeah, yeah.
or
Mhm.
once I saw, or this happened, and you know, it's like a secret. But um,
Yeah, it's funny because somebody came in the store about a week and a half ago and says, "I got to show you these videos. I got some videos of UFOs, but now I don't believe in them, but I'm going to show you this video." So that
Mhm.
kind of thing. Yep.
so yeah, I guess that kind of comes along with people being more open. You know, the people that don't want to talk at all seem to be more our generation.
Mhm.
So it's, you know, bringing those people out. And we're down to 5 minutes. I don't know how this went so fast. Holy cow.
But Phil,
But
in your
dang.
opinion, what's going on here? What's going on planet Earth? It's just part of our evolution.
That's a big question.
I know.
Um,
Yeah.
In your
He
opinion.
can't do
In
that
your
in
opinion, just make it.
4 minutes.
okay, so um, I'm gonna, you know, I this isn't a direction I would ordinarily take, and I'm going to say first of all, Dolores Cannon. If anyone is familiar with her and her material, you know, I would say not everything she says hits with me, but every once in a while, like reading some of her stuff, you know, when she has somebody under regression and they're claiming to be an alien from out there, and they say, you know, really, you know, if you look at Earth, it's way out on the far edge of the galaxy. There's really a big bustling community of life out there, and you guys are way out on the edge, and we kind of think that's where you should be at the moment. And that one day, you'll participate in the grand scheme of thing because the universe is teeming with life, and just not yet. And that sort of sentiment rings true with me. I'm not going to go point by point defending or knocking down specific things that she says has come out of her hypnotic sessions, but if the Milky Way galaxy has about 300 billion stars in it, and about 1 in 6 the space telescopes have determined, Hubble, Kepler, Webb now, might have a potentially habitable planet or moon around it. That's about 50 billion worlds just in the Milky Way alone that could sustain life.
Right.
And they say that there's 2 trillion galaxies ultimately out there.
Mm-hmm.
You multiply 2 trillion times that 50 billion, you get 100 sextillion potentially habitable worlds out there if the Milky Way is an average galaxy.
Yeah,
And then you say, and life only happened here, didn't it? So, I mean, the space is just probably teeming with life, and we're stuck in this generation, probably one of the last generations that's going to be earthbound. And when future generations look back and they say, "Oh my gosh, people actually thought that they were the only thing going in the universe," those people were silly.
Right. Well, we're down to like 2 minutes, so thank you, Bill, for being on. What are you doing next?
Okay. Usually the end of October means the last of my big run of speaking engagements. The next thing, the big thing, I have some libraries lined up here and there, but I'll be at Potographs in March of next year in Ann Arbor. I think that's March 4th, a benefit for the Humane Society. And in April, I'll be speaking at Little Traverse Bay, the Parafest out there. And so I'll be stopping by at some point for the Old Mill Parafest in Dundee on November 12th. I won't be speaking at that, but so many good people are going to be speaking at that event, so it's kind of unavoidable.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
We will see you there.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for being on. I'd love to do a part 2 because there's so many other things that we could talk about. But I know you've had a busy day. Bless you for being with us.
Yes,
Bill.
thanks a lot, Bill.
And we'll do it again.
Thank you so very much.
So,
all right.
And, yeah.
You take care and have a great night. Now we will be talking again for sure.
We'll stay connected.
Yep.
Anybody wants to hook up with Bill, they can find him on Facebook, almost anywhere on the web. Find your books on Amazon or any place you're speaking. And they're great books.
Thank you so much.
So everybody keep your eyes to the skies. Have a wonderful week. And may all of your awakenings be mystical. Good night, everyone.
Good night.